I think it is an interesting question to ask. How many teachers really are, quotes, bad teachers? How much of the problem of teaching is the teacher? How much of it is the classroom? How much of it is the student? I think that there's certainly a range of what we mean by good teaching and bad teaching. There is, in some sense, just variety about what people like and what they don't like. Some people want more video, some people don't want any video, some people want very animated, some people want a lecture, some people want discussion. There are some fields and backgrounds that will vary from student to student, so some people will really like a professor, some students will not like that professor. But I think all of those differences still can have us leaving a question about what do we mean by good teaching or bad teaching. At the very least, I think Sartre's distinction between being in itself and being for itself is very useful, right? That you can't use the categories of identity. You can't really think about terms of substance in terms of people or of situations. It's not like there's a good student or a bad student or a good teacher or a bad teacher, right? I mean, it's sort of like Sartre would say, if I say someone is not a good teacher, I don't mean it in the same way that when I say an inkwell is not an oak tree, right? There's a difference between speaking of things that are categorically different and then trying to talk about those rough approximations that we use to try to describe very complex relational unfoldings that we were involved in, implicated in, and as if we were just judging and weighing and measuring things that are there that we could just put on a scale and weigh independent of us. But I do think there is a legitimate concern that some students ought to have about teaching. There was a tale that sort of apocryphal tale of the professor who sits behind the desk and wants to just sleep, and as the professor sleeps, if a student complains, he throws a tennis ball at the student. Now, I don't know if anyone's ever had that professor who's that bad. You know, are there professors that bad? I don't know. I don't think so. I think anytime, though, that the teaching is not what a student wants, first, I wonder to what extent they see that as a problem. I wonder how many professors are really lazy. Are there a lot of lazy professors? And what's a student supposed to do about a lazy professor? I don't know. You know, there was a professor, again, a sort of apocryphal tale, who this was a night class, and this professor would open the class. It was supposed to be a 3-hour class. And no kidding, right? And this professor would come in, and the professor would say, "All right, let's get started so we can all get home." Well, can you imagine what happens when a professor talks that way? Let's get started so we can all get home. This is the line that the professor used. And it set an immediate context for the entire class. Everyone immediately, no one had anything to say. The readings were fine. They understood them very clearly. No questions. And is it time to go yet? And they were watching their watches. And it's like, and now, was this professor doing them a service? I guess they didn't have anything to teach, perhaps. You know, I guess that's sad. I don't think that could be true. Could that be true? I don't know. Maybe. But you'd want to think that, no, this is a great disservice. People paid there. But the students, now, why? You know, you say the professor wasn't doing them a service. And the professor argued, I heard, I don't know, again, these apocryphal stories, that, you know, these are classes where, you know, they go on an hour or 2 hours. They would never go the full length. They'd never go the full 3 hours. Now, is that the professor's fault? Why didn't the students all band together and go, well, we have studied up, and in fact, we picked up 3 or 4 books from the references, and we boned up on those, and we see the way that this guy tried to resolve the contention, but now we've come to see that these other scholars are really haggling this way, and let's have this debate now. Is it the professor's obligation to engage the students? Is it the material's obligation? Perhaps the professor's job is to set up proper material for engagement. I don't know if it's... I think there are places where you could condemn, quotes, bad teaching. I think it really does happen out there. I think if it does happen, the task of the student is to, as crazy as it sounds, is to realize that you're in a power relationship. There's probably little that you can do other than, you can write a very articulate letter to a dean and say, here's a person who's sleeping in class and throwing tennis balls at me. That's unacceptable. Or is regularly letting the class out early at halftime, is not there all the time. I think those are probably warrantable for writing a letter. But if the person if the student can't, in addition to that, somehow make a great education in spite of it, I wonder if there isn't just an explanation game being played. I wonder if a person isn't just looking and they're happy with it. Actually, they prefer the situation of a teacher who kind of is complainable about, because that way later when they move back home they can look at their parents and go, oh, I told you it wouldn't work. All these bad teachers there, they kept me from expressing my creativity and becoming someone. It's always going to be easy to find an explanation for why it didn't pan out. I don't think life always happens the way that we want. I think there's a lot of accepting what happens and making do with what comes along. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Learning to courageously accept, to do one's best, and then to accept whatever happens. But to do one's best. I think, too, it's easy to slide into this do one's best and then be perfectionist and be neurotic about stuff. Or to just slack along and just kind of, well, I'm just going to accept whatever happens. Yeah, whatever, okay, man, I'll do a lot of chill out, hang. That chill out, hang, self-satisfied, comfortably indifferent is not at all what you're after. You don't want to be sort of comfortably indifferent in your education, especially if you're complaining about it. I mean, if you're going to complain about your education, fix it. I mean, or stop complaining, or complain and then go fix it.